So right now we're going to be talking about positive behaviour management and particularly how it relates to ADHD. But my background is very much around behaviour, and certainly when I was working as a teacher, I took a particular interest in people who had behaviour which was driven by something other than, you know, sort of gobby teenagers, because that's the age group that I worked with. And I used to run a large LSA team, learning support assistants, in a college. And in later career-wise, I developed and ran a behavioural support offer within the college. So I saw behaviour from a lot of different angles. And what I do know is that behaviour associated with ADHD needs a bit of careful handling, but there's some rules about it all. So let's get going with the actual content. Now, first of all, I want us all to bust the myth that we somehow can control our students and pupils. There's only one person's behaviour that you can control. And if you can go and click onto the chat bit on this Zoom, and I'd like you to put in there whose behaviour it is that you can control whilst you're in class. So there should be a chat button for you there. I'd like you to just add that, please. Yes, got a few coming in now. Let's have a look at our chats. Your own, yes, exactly, your own behaviour. That's absolutely right. It's interesting, isn't it, that somehow the myth is that because we're the adult in the room in most occasions, that we're the ones in charge, but we're really not. We're not in charge of everyone else. We're only in charge of ourselves. And it's a very important thing to remember when you're talking about behaviour management. Something about ADHD is that there is this estimate that a child with ADHD receives 20,000 more negative comments than their peers by the time they get to secondary school. So in that respect, you have to imagine that if you have this constant reinforcement of behaviour that's driven by ADHD actually, but people might assume it's driven by something else, willfulness or whatever, then you're going to experience a lot of negatives because that's what you're receiving. And that's a pretty difficult thing to understand for a very small person. And when we talk about behaviour, all behaviour is driven by something. This is the iceberg theory here. And there are lots of reasons for behaviour outbursts. The thing with the iceberg is that the biggest part of it is totally invisible. And that's why it's important to consider what we're seeing and what's driving it. Because the bit we're seeing is the bit above the waterline if you bring it down to that level. And it's all behaviour is driven by something. So in ADHD terms, there would be the neurological differences, the need to call out, the need to move, the difficulty with participating because you're zoning out or whatever that might be. But for us, we also have difficulties. Our behaviour is driven by our own differences, our feelings, emotions, impact of COVID, stress at work. It could be a general bit of upset. We all have behaviour that's driven by something, events, etc. So it's important to recognise that actually your young people also will have that problem. I've got some people sending me messages. Okay, that's fine. Let's move on. Sorry, distracted or what? I think one of the things we need to recognise with ADHD in terms of behaviour is that routines help very, very much. And it's better, the behaviour is better because students and young people learn how to behave because they know what's coming next. And one of the things I know about routines in class is that the start and finish time is important. So there's people often who will start the lesson but not engage straight away. So, you know, do you start on time or do you start 5 minutes after the beginning of the lesson? For most students, they want to know exactly when that's going to be. And usually it's because they need to know how long it's going to be before their need to move will kick in. So they need to know how long they've got to maintain this type of behaviour for. They like to know when there's going to be flow and movement. And if that's a routine in your class, then that's really important. Changing routines can lead to outbursts. And that's usually because it's not just about autism, it's about all kinds of feelings inside. It's because everyone likes to know where they are. And if you have a scattered mind, which you do with ADHD, routines are very important. It actually helps to keep a lid on the behaviour itself. And if you break the routine yourself, even though it's your rule and routine, then it's like giving a green light to everyone that, oh, it doesn't matter about routines. And particularly if you work so well within a routine. So this is a great picture of how the, an ADHD brain might feel without a routine. And if you can help a young person to have a routine, they're much better at becoming more organised, less muddled, etc. So if you have a neurodiverse brain, routines are crucial. It helps to keep the calm a little bit. But talking about behaviour generally, there's always two ways or two thoughts about what you're seeing. And I've got a couple of examples here. So this is not sitting still. In class, you're going to have that, little wrigglers and people that constantly get up and sharpen their pencil or whatever that it might be. And you can think of this in two ways. You could say, oh, they're just not bothered about my class. They're just attention-seeking behaviour. And what that does, if you think that way, what that does is it triggers a feeling inside you, which then causes your iceberg to react in a different way. So the other way of looking at these behaviours is to say this person needs to move, or they're having difficulties with where they're sitting now, they need to move. And actually what we need to do is try and help them to incorporate that. It's not about seeing it as a negative, it's saying, well, what do I need to do differently for this particular behaviour? And then we've got often late. Now, I've made notes about this because working with the older age groups, I know that patterns of childhood through different key stages of learning, it changes. And the young person goes from primary school where things are nicely put together, your classes start and finish, it's often the same room each time. You have a bell, you follow your classmates back to class. The older you get, the less of that you have. So I know that you can often think that in older students, you say, oh, they're late, or they're just lazy, or no one's seen them out of the house, so there's no parenting going on here. But actually, the other side of that is true. They need help with personal organisation. And in college, for example, you have staggered start and finish times for lessons. And you could find yourself talking to some of your friends whose class doesn't start until half an hour, but your class has already started. So there's a lot of personal organisation needed there, alarms and reminders and things like that. So whatever the behaviour it is that you're seeing, remember that it's your approach to managing it, which is going to be the most positive thing that pupil and student will receive. So I think we've got to avoid the negative comments and solve the problems. Think about it rather than blaming the young person for their own behaviour. Try and find a solution to the problem and be assertive. I know people dress up their behaviour management with a nice few quirky, sarcastic comments, which could be quite amusing, but actually when you're on the receiving end of it, it doesn't always feel very amusing. So I like positive language. It makes such a difference, such a difference. And we've got to stop telling our students and pupils what we don't want them to do, because we're always telling them what we don't want. So we'll say, don't do that. And we'll say, don't argue. And we'll say, don't say that. And we'll say, don't lie. Don't. No. And what we should be doing is recognizing what we're seeing and then saying what it is we want them to do. We want to change that behavior, remind them what we want. And I need to get rid of the thank you, and I need to, no, I don't. I want to get rid of the please, and I want to add a thank you to your verbal responses to things. So let's have a look at this little thing here. We've got a few don'ts here, and I'm going to start this off by asking you to tell me what you would say if instead of don't talk. So what might be your response to that? I want you to just put something in the comments, and I want you to take away the please, whatever you're going to say, take away the please, but add a thank you at the end. So I'll just wait a second while you put something in the comments, and then I'll give you some feedback on how to change these round. So I'm ready when you are. Okay, let's go with the comments. Okay, so we've got Listen, thank you. Exactly. So you could even say, you need to be listening now, or you could add a non-verbal, okay? But yes, definitely, rather than please don't talk, which is what we tend to do, it could be that we use something like, you need to be listening now, thank you. And that's really good. So let's have a look at don't push in. Now, I've got an idea for that. Don't push in. It could be something like, you need to go to the back of the queue, thank you. Or there's another queue over there, just say what you want them to do. You need to do this. This is what you should be doing. Thank you. Don't text. I mean, that's if you've got older students with phones. I would say, the phone needs to be away in your bag, out of sight and switched off. Tell them what you want them to do, and you're much more likely to get the action that you're after, rather than just saying, don't do this, don't do that. I'll just do one more on here. Don't call out. I mean, it could be that what you want them to do is to raise their hand. And in the last session, we talked about learning resources, and you could use voting cards. You could say, don't call out, I want you to vote yes or no, or multiple choice, hold up A, B, C or D. Say what you want. I need you to put your hand up, thank you, or wait your turn, thank you. So change your don'ts to do's. What you'll know is that everyone will benefit from that approach, not just those people with ADHD. So a couple more things here specific to ADHD. These are just tips, really. I very much recommend seating plans, and there's a reason for that. People with ADHD need to be sitting near you. You need to be able to give them positive reinforcement whenever you can, and rather than make your way to the back of the class to talk to them, you need to be able to get a quiet space near them quickly to keep them on task. This does mean that you'll need to have a seating plan. I recommend changing it once every 2 weeks. Doesn't matter what age of your students. Once every 2 weeks, just move people around, because I think the sensible peers approach is quite good, but it's not fair on the sensible peer if they sit next to someone who needs an extra bit of support all the time. And when you've got a seating plan, you can also plan for the person who's easily distracted to be facing away from the distractions, such as a busy wall or windows and stuff like that. So that's one thought there for behaviours and restlessness. And then when you've got students that can't wait their turn and they're calling out, or they get very fidgety because they're waiting for some help, one of the things I recommend is to set up a turn-taking book. They can write their name down, and then they know who they're after. Who, once John has had his bit of support from the TA, the LSA or the teacher, then I'll know it's my turn, I'm going to get help. They can see when it's their turn, and they reduce the feelings of being overlooked. I highly recommend that you get a little pile of tasks. So it could be something like, if you're older students, can you visit a website whilst you're waiting to take your turn? Or it could be, think of some questions that you want to ask me, or it could be that you give them a task to do in the classroom. So that's just a couple of ideas there. And finally, keep a sense of humour, because what we say to our learners, our students of all ages, is that we expect 100%, and that their attitude has to reflect that. Now, I don't know if you know this, but if in the alphabet, if A is number 1 and Z is number 26, then attitude adds up to 100. So I think that's quite a nice thing to do. You can embed a bit of literacy and numeracy there with that little nugget, and tell your students, about attitude being 100%. No matter what the problem is, keep the faith. Now, I know that you're going to be excited to hear this, that we're running a one-day level 2 or level 3 workshop for ADHD. It's fully accredited by OCN London. If you want to enrol onto it, it's going to be on the 15th of May. If you want to enrol on it, just get in touch with me and I can send you more information about it. It's what we call a short course qualification, and it's about 16 to 18 guided learning hours. So we have a whole day workshop, and then you complete a workbook afterwards. So get in touch with me if you're interested in that. And that, everybody, is that for now. If you've got any questions about ADHD, some behaviours you'd like me to help you to dissect, then please just email me. You've got my email address. I'll be more than happy to help you out on that. So thanks so much for your time. I think we've done it. You should still be able to get a bite to eat before you have to go back to class. And I hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.